Welcome into the Illini Inquirer podcast. It is Jeremy Werner and Derek Piper live at State Farm Center, where we saw just a stinker, or put the earmuffs on the kids in the car if they're listening. 3, 2, 1. An ass kicking, as Brad Underwood called it. And that's a pretty apt description of Illinois losing yet again to Maryland. It is Brad Underwood's kryptonite, the Terps, 91-70. That's one of the worst losses we have seen at State Farm Center. I think it's one of the worst losses in State Farm history for Illinois. Not a lot of 20-point losses at home for the Illini, but certainly one of the worst in the Brad Underwood era. And Derek Piper, our research extraordinaire, went back last 20-point loss at home, 2018, early in the Brad Underwood era, to Penn State, another kryptonite for Brad Underwood while he's been here at Illinois. It's ugly, Derek. Illinois loses back-to-back games for the first time since the end of the 22-23 season. They fall to 3-8 against Maryland in the Brad Underwood era, and they've now lost 3 of 4. But obviously the big news tonight was Tomislav Ivisic was not available. Another star for Illinois, not available for a game. And boy, if there was one game that you didn't want to have your center in, this one certainly was not that, with Julian Reese, 27 points and 17 rebounds. Derek Queen, 25 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists. Looked like a lottery pick there. But Derek, this was ugly. It was a layup line for those guys, and Illinois just got bullied around.
It's probably the worst matchup in the Big Ten to not have your center. Ultimately, when you look at Julian Reese as a guy that's given you problems in the past, 2 double-doubles against you last year, 20 and 11 in this building, going up against Coleman Hawkins in a more undersized front line for Illinois last season when they beat you. That was a shorthanded Illinois team too without Terrence Shannon. But and then to have Derek Queen be a middle of the first round type of projected guy, I mean, Jeremy Wu from ESPN, he's not just checking out Kasparis tonight. He's looking at Derek Queen and a guy that has the potential to creep into the lottery and showed you a lot of his offensive skill set tonight. So that doesn't excuse, 60-some points in the paint, 62 points in the paint. That is, I don't know if I've heard of that number before, especially against Illinois. Maybe you get that in a Illini versus a Chicago State type of game, but not in a Big Ten game against you, even without your center. You still have Merez. You still have Ben. They were just, especially when Merez was in foul trouble and off the court, just completely outmatched in the paint. And Brad, we know, hates to play zone, hates it to his core, and even played a couple possessions of it. Did end up giving up a 3 to a 46% three-point shooter in the Big Ten to Jacoby Gillespie. So this was just brutal all around. KJ, that's probably the worst we've seen KJ play. I know he finishes with 21, and the turnovers and some of the decision-making, Kylan was bad, flat out, in terms of his turnovers too. And the three-point shooting is a conversation to have. They're now just a shade above Washington for the dead last spot on three-point shooting percentage in Big Ten play. So there's some issues to clean up, and how things have shifted. Not to say that they're cemented by any means, but coming off the West Coast and you play without KJ and Penn State, and like, is the process over? Is this team a bona fide, like, top-level national contender? Now they've lost 3 or 4, and they're reeling, and they need to get it back on the tracks.
All right, I want to hit on that when we come back, but I want to play a little bit from Brad Underwood, his opening statement of his press conference tonight, because I thought he hit on a lot of these things, so I just want to let people hear from Brad Underwood after the game.
That wasn't very much fun. Been a long time since the Illini have taken a good old ass kicking like that. So give Maryland all the credit in the world. Really no excuses from us. We have had a just really tough week with sickness and not knowing if guys are playing and guys not in practice. It was, nobody played any good. We were just awful. Nobody played any good. Give Maryland all the credit. They, we knew it was going to be tough in the paint without Tommy, and they pretty much just controlled the game from the paint. And they're a really good three-point shooting team. So it was kind of pick your poison. But turnovers, points off turnovers, very uncharacteristic to have, 12 turnovers from your starting backcourt. Very uncharacteristic night to have, no offensive rebounds from Merez. We had 2 at half, so that'll tell you where our energy was and our focus. And we just have to be better. I mean, it was just a stinker.
So there you go. That's Brad Underwood after the game. And Derek, like, you understand, like, without Tomislav Ivisic against this Maryland team, it was going to be tough. Like, even with Tommy, this would have been a tough matchup, as you said. I think it's one of the worst matchups. But Illinois has to win in the other areas. And as you said, there are 2 guards, which have to be the strength of this game. Kasper Siakishonis and Kylan Boswell combined for 12 turnovers. If Illinois is going to give up all these points in the paint, they have to make up for it and win the math game with threes, right? And they shoot 6 of 28 from 3 tonight. That's not going to get it done. That's a terrible recipe. But those turnovers were just at bad moments. It felt like Illinois was like within a possession or within 2 possessions, and then those guys have those turnovers. And I know they can play you differently without Tomislav Ivisic, but it led to 27 points off 16 turnovers for Illinois. Fast break points, Maryland had a bunch tonight when Illinois didn't have any. So 17 points to that team already getting easy buckets in the paint, getting more easy buckets in the paint that way. It was just Illinois should be better than one guy is out and you have no chance. Like against USC, I know Kaspers is out, but you didn't play well. Like you're supposed to have the talent to overcome some of those things. So for me, I know you've had guys out and you've had a sick team today, but if this team does have the ceiling that we've seen at times, and that Brad Underwood keeps talking about, they shouldn't have this low of a mark without one player. And I know Kaspers is important. Tomislav is really important to this team, but got to have a better effort than 91-70.
No, I agree with that. That's a fair criticism for sure. I think that in both games, you got punked, really. I mean, the energy level, toughness level wasn't there. I thought Illinois would come out galvanized tonight, like angry coming off the Michigan State loss. Now, when you do have guys who are sick, we were talking about Will Riley, who was warming up and he was questionable. And I'm not trying to excuse all of that. Brad even said that, we don't want to make excuses, but just didn't look his normal, energy level. So I think there's part of that, but you do got to have a level of grit and fight to you that Illinois just didn't have in USC, and obviously got taken to you against Maryland. But it's tough. It's a bad formula when you're shooting 20% or below from 3, and then you're turning it over everywhere. Aside from the fact that they're, of course, pummeling you in the paint, but that just raised the bar to a different level. You said it right there. If you are making threes, even at just a decent rate, 33 to 35% from 3 at the volume Illinois takes them, and then you cut your turnovers from 16 to 10, this is a totally different ball game, even if you are, giving up a good amount of points at the rim. So how good of a 3-point shooting team is this? How much should they be settling from 3? And I think it matters based on the guy, although I was looking at the stats. If everyone outside of KJ in Big Ten play is shooting 33% or lower from 3, and a lot of guys are in the 20s, and that's been something that is an issue. And I know I asked Brad about Kylan. Look, Kylan's had some really rough stretches recently. USC without Kasparis, Michigan State largely without KJ as well. This is a junior, high major, proven guard who has had some up and down natures in his career, but he's got to be better. He's got to be more sound with the ball and be more confident and make more layups and make sure that the threes he's taking are good threes. And there's just been a lot of sketchy decision making from him.
The Nola passes really get on Brad's nerve,
and we heard that tonight. He's got to be a lot more sound. Just in general for a veteran, aside from the fact that, like you said, when you're missing KJ or you're missing Tommy tonight, it was interesting. The matchup, Penn State game without KJ, you look at Penn State, they have Ace Baldwin. They turn people over as much as anybody in the Big Ten like that. And it's Penn State, who has owned Illinois or been the thorn in their side at the very least, and Illinois runs them off the floor. And then tonight, You're like, okay, no Tommy. They're a great front court. Maryland is what they are to Illinois, and obviously a lot different results. So, yeah, I think I don't know if I'm surprised, but I thought Brad might. If there's going to be a night this season, he hasn't really gone kind of scorched earth or really just put his team to the fire and said, we're not tough or something like that.
Yeah.
This would have been a night to do it. Maybe without the sickness dynamic, he maybe would have went all into that.
Well, it's kind of my question. One of my main questions for Brad tonight was, all right, I get it. You've been without guys, but is it alarming that you've had two, what he calls uncharacteristic performances in the last 2 weeks after this team had kind of gotten to a high point after the West Coast trip, right? Because I do see it as a little alarming. This is a huge moment, I think, for Illinois basketball in this season. And, we don't know when Tomislav is going to be back. He was in the building tonight. I'm imagining he's been taking things that allow him to be around the team. But I just feel like this is a real big moment in the season of what is this team going to be? Because we keep hearing about the ceiling, but right now they're 13-6, right? Like,
yeah,
5-4 in Big Ten play. That's not good enough for what we thought this team would be. I know the metrics love them, and I still think the ceiling is high for this team. And I know we thought they'd be up and down, but I know they have higher expectations for themselves. So even without some of these pieces, and I know how hard it is, like I think there's a big point in the season where this team's got to fight through adversity. You got to succeed despite adversity, like you did against Penn State. Some of these last couple games, even Michigan State, I thought they fought through it, right? They just didn't execute at certain points in the game. And obviously had some things going against you, but I thought they fought through those things. It didn't feel like they did against Maryland and USC very well. So I'm just really interested to see how they come out against Northwestern, Derek, because this should be a team with kind of its backs against the wall. Not that the next game means the season, but you got to turn this thing, and you got to start stacking some wins together if you want a really good NCAA tournament seeding, because the Big Ten title's out the window. Unless you're going to rattle off 12 straight wins or something like that, or 10 straight wins, you're not a Big Ten title contender right now. So they need Ivisic back. They need to be a whole team. But if Ivisic isn't out there for Northwestern or the next game or whatever it is, what are you going to be? Like, how do you figure this thing out? So I just think it's a real test of the leadership. And tonight, Boswell with his turnovers, Trey White was okay. He was sick the last couple of days. But Ben Humrickhouse is really struggling to get, looks at the hoop. He's really struggling to get involved offensively. And this is a bad matchup for him defensively. I'm not going to hold it against him that Julian Reese and those guys took him, to school, because that's not what he is. He's not a 5. But those guys got to give more. And I just think there's a big moment for this team this season, Derek.
No, it definitely is. Yeah, you would position yourself not only to be in the Big Ten title hunt, but to really realistically think about, could you be a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament? Could you be as high as a 3 seed? And that's not like maybe a 2 seed. I don't know. I hesitate to say out the window, but it's unlikely as of right now, looking at your profile. But
yeah, this is a quad 1 loss, by the way.
Yeah, right.
So the way you lost it at home, man.
It is ugly looking at it, like 91-70 at home to an unranked Maryland team. But yeah, the metrics have been decent to Maryland, and quad 1 is in the proper category ultimately. But no doubt, like, you worry about, has the team regressed from the point of the West Coast trip, and it's probably maybe a little bit unfair as of right now. But inconsistency is very fair criticism, and that's something that I expected with this team, and there's a reason why I didn't maybe consider them as much for the Big Ten title as some others did. And look, I picked Indiana, so I'm not going to put any shade on too many people for how that ultimately played out. But we're seeing it's really pop up with this team with their 3-point shooting. Up until that USC game, there really wasn't a question of effort on any night with this Illinois squad, and now we've had some of that here recently. So I think that's mixed in there as well. And look, KJ has not played like a freshman, save for tonight and maybe some moments like against Tennessee and whatnot. And when inevitably he might, like tonight, did play like one, you got to have veterans that pick him up. And Kylan's not doing that right now. And Trey White's not doing that. And Ben Humrickhouse didn't do it tonight. So that's where you need that to really step up here as soon as Sunday against Northwestern. So I expect KJ. He won't struggle like this for long. I expect him to bounce back, but still the point holds that the older guys need to be better. Like Trey White's back to being kind of an enigma. Like he's hard to figure out what he's going to give you. He's
I wonder
awesome,
how
and now
much. I wonder how much this week was being sick. But yeah, I mean he was not really existent at Michigan State, right? And then tonight, just a really up and down performance. Had a nice stretch there in the first half, but those guys got to be more consistent so that when you're freshmen, like tonight, Kaspers has 7 turnovers and Merez didn't play very well, right? Like he got in foul trouble, had 0 rebounds late in this game. You think those freshmen are going to have those kind of games. So that's where your veterans got to step up, and they did.
No, and that's something that's got to pick up for sure. And I think that we don't admittedly know obviously how long that Tommy will be out, but and this is you're not going to see many front courts. It's good that you're not matching up with Michigan until the final week of the season, and even then Purdue if you're thinking about Trey Kaufman-Renn. But it is a little concerning, not that anyone's surprised by it now, that Brad would rather play Jake Davis in the front court around the rim than Kerry Booth there. And look, Kerry's been nowhere close to the rotation for a while, and not to all pinpoint on him, but if Merez is going to get in foul trouble and it's a freshman playing down there, things get really
scary.
Yeah, scary. That's the right word.
It's scary because I'll be honest with you. From what I saw, Jake Davis was better defending at the rim.
Yeah.
Right? Kerry's just small. He's just really thin. I did like that he was confident shooting threes. Was 1 of 5, but he made one of them. But he kept shooting, which I didn't mind because they needed somebody to shoot and kind of take that Tommy role. But defensively and on the glass, he's just not really a factor. He's really just a stretch shooter at this point. And every time he had the ball in his hands and kind of was trying to decide what to do, I was nervous. That's a guy who hasn't played a lot, right? But it really shows how much depth or lack of it you have in that front court when you got Kerry Booth, who's not ready to make an impact, and Jason Jackson, who's obviously redshirting. So maybe you should have taken another big guy just to have a body, right? Just a big guy that can battle down there. But that's really scary. The lack of post, but it tells you how valuable Tomislav Ivisic is, right? Because he is one of your most consistent players too. On top of everything he does defensively, everything he does offensively, they play just like Coleman last year. Everything they do is based on Tommy, really. But when you don't have him, boy, it changes everything you play. The defense can play you differently and really pressure those guards, and obviously really bothered them today. It took them out of their game plan, but man, one guy that important.
He is definitely important for sure. 7-1 is 7-1, no doubt. And while there have been stretches where we've questioned why isn't Tommy being more physical around the basket offensively, defensively, he's done a pretty good job of bolstering Illinois' what's been a really, really good rim defense. Now, they haven't gone against a ton of back to the basket centers or really that. That duo for Maryland is pretty darn good, and there aren't many like them in the Big Ten. And I'm not saying it would have been an entirely different game as far as Tommy shutting down Reese or something like that, but it would have been much more of an effort to be able to stop them. You're not playing zone. I don't think Brad is forced to have to throw that out there and just a last ditch. What can we do to just do anything against them?
When was the last time he ran zone? Has he ever run zone? I was racking my brain about this.
I remember, was it last year where he rolled it out at times, and then we asked him about it in the media, and then he's like, it's not actually a zone. It's even though it clearly was a zone. I forgot what he even called it.
It was like a 1-3-1, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it kind of looked like a 1-3-1. But yeah, it was like a show zone, and then they didn't do it was like a play or something like that. That is anathema to Brad Underwood. That is evil to have to run a zone. So that's how desperate they got tonight.
They did for sure, and different matchup. But as far as Ben goes, Nick Martinelli's coming right back to him, starting on Sunday, and they obviously saw the booty ball. It's different, 6'10" for Queen, and Reese is 6'9", and good athleticism.
A lot of strength there too. Yeah.
Strength and elevating over you. Maybe Illinois, as they probably should, send a little bit more help to Martinelli, and that's not as good of a Northwestern's actually not as good of a 3-point shooting team as Maryland's been. Can we address this though? Like, because we get it a lot.
I'd be worried though. Jalen Leach and Ty Berry are playing pretty well. We'll get into that here in a
That's
little
fair.
bit. Go ahead.
Can we do the Tommy thing? The Tommy is quote unquote deathly sick or something like that, and
yeah, go for it.
He shows up here. I don't want to play I'm not the doctor. I don't know what he has or how contagious he is or isn't, and I'm not going to tell a guy to wear a mask or anything like that. But it is a little weird that a guy is that sick and at the game around the team, dapping up the guys during the. I'm not a doctor again, but
yeah,
and
they have team doctors. They have team doctors.
It's kind of a weird thing though.
We as a media crew should have asked. Illini Inquirer asked a lot of the questions, and maybe we should ask that as well. But I would imagine I'm not a doctor either. But since he's been sick since Sunday at the least, right? At the earliest.
It sounds like strap on Sunday, yeah.
But he had been sick before that, right? Coming into the game. I would imagine he's been on antibiotics, and being a father and married to someone who actually researches this thing and takes care of all this thing. If you're on antibiotics for a couple of days, then you're not contagious after that. So I would imagine something like that is happening. Or what is the illness? They're not going to share that with us. Like, is it a contagious illness? I don't know.
Gotcha.
So we're not doctors, but yes, it's something worth following up for and asking Brad about.
Yeah, they're not stupid. I'm not trying to frame it as that. Like, oh my God. Northwestern, Illinois is going to have 4 players available to play because they let Tommy be around the team. I'm not suggesting that, but yeah, it is something that it's unfortunate because we've seen it happen during every season. This time, even regular everyday people, they go through what we do, and when it spreads through a team, it can be tough. And Brad mentioned guys being in and out of practice. It's no fun. You've just been sick.
Oh, man. That norovirus is going – I think that's what we had because it hit my family and still is hitting my family for the last, 10 days. My entire wife's side of the family and all of my family have just absolutely gotten hit. So – 2 days ago, when we were potting after that Michigan State game, Derek, that was my flu game. I was not feeling very well, but I know other people have had it worse. I can't imagine playing a basketball game or stuff like that.
That's tough.
All right, well, we will get to some of the questions. If you want to send those in, we're going to answer a few of them. But before we do that, I do want to get to one of our great sponsors who helps make this show possible. Are you ready to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well easy. They're dietitian approved and ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes, so you can fuel right and feel great no matter what life throws at you. Factor arrives fresh and fully prepared, perfect for any active and busy lifestyle. And with over 40 options across 8 dietary preferences on the menu each week, it's easy to pick meals tailored to your goals. So you can choose from preferences like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. And Factor can help you feel your best all day long with wholesome smoothies, breakfast, grab-and-go snacks, and more add-ons. So reach your goals this new year with ingredients you can trust and convenience that can't be beat. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/Illini50off and use code Illini50off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code Illini50off at factormeals.com/Illini50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. All right, Derek, let's get some of these great questions. Sam asks, how high is the panic level in terms of consistency, even not at full strength? This team should be able to win these games. Yeah, I just kind of talked about that. So on a scale of 1 to 10, my panic level, it depends on what you're talking about. I've seen some people tweeting about this team being out of the bubble. Listen, they'll probably be top 13, top 12 net in the morning. This is a quad one loss, but definitely a margin of victory that's going to hurt them. It's an ugly loss, and they're now 13-6. At some point, winning matters. So right now, my panic level of being a top 3 seed would be very high. It would be like a 9 or 10. When it comes to making the tournament, for this team, it's always about getting the tournament healthy, getting the tournament playing well. I still think this team is capable of that, but making a run, you need consistency, and this team does not have consistency.
I think general panic level as far as consistency, 4 or 5. Like I am reminded of where I thought this team was going to be at this time in the year. And maybe that's something I should have put out the window. But if you would have told me they're 5-4 in the Big Ten and they've lost 3 or 4 in the middle of January, I'm like, yeah, okay.
But they have some great wins, right? Like
yeah,
the
they
Oregon
have some
win,
great wins.
Indiana.
They've been up and down, and will they hit their stride in February going into March? Like, that's always been the big question, right? So I think that's fair to dial back some of that worry, but also this is a portion of the schedule where, like, it was supposed to start now, where you start to go on a run and reel off some wins and bolster that thing up. You're already at a point now where I don't know that the previous 5 seasons, Big Ten home record has been 8-2 every year the past 5 seasons. That's a high bar. It's good, but it's not great. It's not Mackey. It's not like
Purdue. Yeah,
it's not Nebraska last year. I don't think they lost at Pinnacle Bank.
Lost back-to-back games at home, man. Ugly games at home.
Yeah, you'd have to win out at home to get that 8-2 again. And yeah, not only that, you've lost to teams that aren't top-tier teams, and obviously tonight was really, really ugly. So I think 3-point shooting makes me concerned, because if they're gonna have a 5 for 25 in the tournament, can they win? I think that's a question for me.
I don't think so. I don't think so. Right? I mean,
they're having too many of those.
Yeah, when you have the turnovers as well. I mean, defensively, I think, outside of tonight, given the matchup that you have, but if you're whole, I think defensively you have a chance every night. But boy, this team was made to make threes. Like, this is why you assembled this crew, and they got to do it at a higher level. I mean, Will Riley 0-1 tonight, obviously was sick. Ben Hummerkaus 0-3, Colin Boswell 1-3, Yakashonis 0-4. Can't happen. Like, those guys have to make threes. Like, this is a team that, when it makes 10 threes, can beat anybody in the country, I think. But that they aren't doing it very often here during Big Ten play.
No, and Trey White's in the range of like 4 for 20 from 3 in Big Ten play.
It's not his game. Yeah.
No, it's not. And there's just some, whether it's early in the clock or tough degree of difficulty. There's some, like, even the KJ step back on Queen. Was that one of his 3 air balls tonight? I don't know. Seeing him shoot 3 air balls was like, holy crap.
You knew he was doing it, like, because you got a big man, and like, we've scouted enough, and Queen had a great contest. That was a really tough shot. Made it a really tough shot. I mean, he's a good athlete. Like, I think he can improve his body a little bit, but like, he's a good athlete and didn't hesitate against him. So I was impressed with him tonight. But yeah, KJ had some bad looks, man. He had some bad shots that led to runouts, and bad turnovers that led to runouts.
For sure. Even Tommy, when he's out, I mean, Tommy's shooting 29% from 3 in Big Ten play. So look, this is still a talented team, still a high ceiling team. Still one that has, for the most part, played pretty good defense. Tonight, you were missing the biggest link to what could help contain their biggest strength. So I'm not going to give them a full pass for that, but yeah, they gotta be able to, like you said, this was built around shooting a high volume of threes, making double-digit threes on definitely more nights than not, if not most nights, and it's kind of been a coin toss. Are they going to make 10, 11, yes, the high point of 15, 16, or are they going to go 4 for 23 or whatever it might be?
Beat teams by 25 and then lose games you shouldn't lose. SRQ, $5 super chat. Thank you, SRQ. The excuses are getting old. At some point, wins matter. Too many games with horrible shooting and dumb turnovers. Maybe this is just who they are. I think it's maybe who they are as an inconsistent team. And I think you're right, Derek. Like, we talk about this team every day, but there was a stretch there where they went 6-7, and you're like, oh, this team might be taking flight, right? And then Kasparis has the injury, and now Tommy's sick. So obviously that is, we could look at back at this in a month, and they win 6 of 8 games. And you're like, oh, they're back on track. They're going to be a 4 or 5 seed in the NCAA tournament, and no one's going to want to play them in the Big Ten tournament or the NCAA tournament. But there's still some concerning things that are happening right now, and the inconsistency makes you miss opportunities, whether it's to win the Big Ten or to get a really good seed in the NCAA tournament.
For sure. I think if you're just looking at the result, Illinois has obviously been here before. They were here in the COVID season, losing back-to-back home games to Ohio State and Maryland. Now, albeit neither one of those was by 21 points. 2019-20, we know there wasn't a tournament, but they were really rolling towards that finish line. They lost 4 in a row at one point in February, and last year lost at home to a Maryland team that didn't even finish above 500 without Terrence. And yes, you do count Tommy out and then KJ out for USC, but this is also a Maryland squad that went to Washington and lost. So, and has just had such a hard time on the road. I know they played better this year in terms of like they were in that Purdue game and gave Purdue all they wanted, but just lost at the end and only lost at Oregon by 4. But Kevin Willard is literally 5-20 in Big Ten road games during his tenure, and 2 of those wins are here. Like that's tough. So, but yeah, back to what you're saying. It's as you look under the microscope at different factors, there is an inconsistency about this team that is it's concerning based on where we've kind of started to not even started, where we set the bar. Like the bar has been second weekend again, and high points of even, higher highs than last year, which are is there the worry of it not materializing or some huge disappointment if they, don't show up or whatever it might be.
All right, let's get to a couple more quickly, and then we'll get out of here. Tom, please tell us what positives we could take from the game. I can't find any. Boswell, wow, that was brutal. Dre Gibbs-Allhorn continues to be a real positive. 15 points tonight. He's had double digits several times. I think now the last 8 games, he's probably averaging about 12 points a game. Derek, just consistent energy. He made a couple shots. I know he hit a 3 late there. But just the consistent aggression, being able to finish at the rim, it's been nice to see from a guard just because he can elevate, unlike Kylan. But he's been a little bit more physical. Feels like he's added some strength, and he's shown no fear, man. And he really contests a lot of things. Like there's one he went up and blocked like Derek Queen, I believe, on a play, and he ended up scoring on it. But I love what you're getting out of him off the bench. 21 points off the bench tonight. 15 of it is from Dre. The bench has been a positive here for the last month, it feels like, and Dre Gibbs-Allhorn's, along with Morez Johnson, such a big catalyst of that.
No doubt. Yeah, I think Dre's confidence. There's even, like I said to you when we were talking about that pull-up jump shot that maybe was his first bucket of the game, there is a little bit of like that, to steal a line that Joey's used, I think, irrational confidence is some of which
he's earned it now. He's earned it now.
Man. I mean, and, of course, I'm not trying to really emphasize the irrational part because Dre has been trending really well for this team, so he should have confidence and go in there with a lot of intensity, which he does. I think he's making, the progression in decision making has definitely been there from last year to this year, and some of the passes he made tonight, namely the one that comes to mind, he did a good job of getting to the paint. I think he jump stopped 2 foot at least, playing off of 2 feet, and Kylan cuts baseline and Dre finds him. That's a play that Kylan's not making right now. Kylan has been a loose cannon in terms of like getting into the teeth of the defense and spraying it out and trying to make a decision. Dre seems to be a little bit more composed than he has.
Yeah, can I ask you a follow-up? TK asked this. Does Underwood need to let DGL run the point more and have Boswell operate as a 2? I mean, obviously KJ, when he's in the game, he's going to run the point, but there are some moments like you like somebody else just to initiate some action, so there's not such a heavy load on Caspers to ignite everything, right? So that's what I like about Dre. His dribble drive is tough for people to contain, so I feel more confident when the ball is in his hands. I just feel like Kylan's more of an off guard. Like he doesn't look comfortable, and he's not making very good decisions. Like I love him crashing the glass. Kylan, no matter what, has been a phenomenal rebounder. Great rebounder. We know he's a pretty good defender. I don't think he's played his best the last 2 games defensively. And I just don't love Kylan on some of those step back 3-pointers that he does, but he made one tonight. I just feel like he doesn't look comfortable right now. Dre does.
That's it, right? It does look like Kylan really is uncomfortable. I don't know if unconfident is a word, but definitely not having the confidence.
Not comfortable being uncomfortable, as our Ben Johnson would say.
That's right. I'm everything he says is yes, coach, especially the Packers stuff. Where's Joey Wagner? But yeah, I think it's something to look at, especially in practice. And I wouldn't argue with Brad if you wanted to go with that. I thought in the Michigan State game where, of course, first half, you got KJ with the foul trouble. Kylan was sinking out there. He was really struggling. I thought maybe DGL should have gotten more or just taken him out for a
I thought that 5
reset.
minutes. I thought that 5 minutes lost you the game. That's why I kept
Yeah.
tweeting. People were getting mad at me, like playing KJ. I was just like, he's losing it right now, and I felt like the coach needed to make a stop there and help his guy out. And I just thought, get KJ in there, settle it down, make sure this run doesn't get out of hand. And there were moments tonight. It was both him and KJ tonight with the decision making.
Yeah, I don't know that I fully trust or would expect that Dre is going to – he just hadn't been put in those spots to see everything as a decision maker and that whole kind of thing. But I do think he'd be confident and go out there, and maybe it's just a look to see what he's got. I mean –
I'm going to say it, Derek, and you know how high praise this is from me. He's giving you some Andres Felice-like things. And just that he can put his head down and bully his way to the rim. And Illinois lacks that, right? I mean, Kylan can do it, but he doesn't finish with consistency with Dre and just some of the decision making. So I don't know if I want Dre as like a full-time, like he's the other lead guard of this team, but there are moments I feel like you can go to him. I think he's earned that trust and to see if he can do maybe a little bit more with it. So I do think Brad is rewarding him, right? Like Dre is getting more of those moments, and man, he's running with it. He's confident.
I think it says something too that, I mean, the performance dictated it, but like you said, kind of a pivotal moment for this team. Dre's up there representing the squad. He is, the lone returner that's playing minutes, but his performance has also gotten to the point where you can rely on him on a night in, night out. And I think it's something that they got to evaluate is how much is he going to potentially eat into some of the Kylan minutes, or when KJ's out, do you got to make sure that Dre's out there, maybe taking some of the ball handling from Kylan. So whatever it is, they got to get Kylan in a better spot, and maybe Dre coming in there for more minutes or more on ball share is part of it. Sometimes
I wonder if they go with a 3-guard lineup too. I don't know if they would do that, because man, the 3 and 4 spots, you're not getting a lot from them either. All right, I just want to wrap up with this. Joe, high ceiling, low floor, and I bring this one up because Tyler Cottingham, who we love from Illini board, and Brad Sturdy, who we've known for so long here, they were talking about high ceiling and with this team, and does this team have that ceiling? And I looked back at them and said the ceiling is the roof, but the floor is the basement with this team. That's kind of the experience we've seen with this team, that even just the last 2 or 3 weeks there.
For sure. And we said the same thing about the 22-23 Illini team.
For
and
sure.
This team's better than that. This
Yes.
team is a better team, even for their inconsistencies. They've been a more consistent squad.
That team could beat UCLA and Texas and almost anybody. Yeah, pretty
volatile. Shocking that Matthew Meyer was one of those guys, but
he led you a lot of wins though too.
He did.
Was part of the reason they won some.
This time of year, he was great. I mean, they went to Wisconsin. He carried you. He had some big performances, but as the year progresses,
I thought it was more your guard play that year was a little up and down. Terrence wasn't as aggressive as he became to be the next year, but that team was an interesting team.
As the year progresses,
Matt made it fun for me though.
He did. No, I mean, you don't have Matthew Meyer, you break a tournament streak and all that kind of thing. Sure. So, and it was entertaining.
But to your point, this team is not going to break an NCAA tournament streak. I'm not concerned about that.
No, but you want to distance yourself from, hey, they're high ceiling but super volatile and untrustworthy. And I'm not getting that was the vibes are off season. I'm not getting the vibes are off with this team. Yeah. But we haven't really got a chance to. They lose to Bama, which we know it's early in the process. They lose to Tennessee. We know that that's the number 1 team in the country at the time. Now, this is some real adversity. This is some real gut check for this squad. And I think it's going to test leadership, test just what this team is made of, who's going to rise up. Maybe it is a guy like Dre whose role is going to change as this thing is at a point of, kind of a fork in the road type of thing. So, that all will be very interesting. as you go forward, and how they respond will be very important.
With all this said, as we wrap up 40 minutes into this team needs Tomislav Ivisic and Kasper Siakashonis on the floor. They're the two best players on this team. They're two future pros. I think Tommy's going to have a chance at the NBA. Kasper's is going to be, I still think, a top 5 pick despite 7 turnovers tonight. Yes, guys, just because he had 7 turnovers does not mean he's going to be a top 5. Not going to be a top 5 pick.
I think he should come back and play another year. I'd love to watch him for another season.
I don't think that will be rewarded, but maybe the Will Riley you can get for another year.
Okay.
But yeah, they need those two. Without those two, these guys, Illinois is not a Final Four contender, not a Big Ten tournament title contender. I'm not even saying regular season anymore because I just think it's going to be tough to get into that battle. Those two guys are special, and those guys kind of are everything that they do offensively, and Tommy was such an impact defensively. So at the end of the day, those two need to be on the court, and whenever those two get back on the court, maybe Illinois can get back into a rhythm. But in the meantime, if Tommy's not back next game, Northwestern's tough, man. Northwestern, they're not a great team, but they got 2 really good players. And as I said before, Leach and Barry are starting to come on a little bit. It's not a very deep team. At least they don't have a low post scorer. They got Matthew Nicholson, but Martinelli's going to go at Hummerkaus, right? Barnheiser's going to go at those guys, and those guys are really 2 tough matchups.
Northwestern's play Illinois tough, and it's one that, you get the booty ball, and I'd be interested in what the game plan is going to be to try to alleviate some of those issues. I think that Ben, on the whole, has been better in terms of toughness defensively, but they cooked him and in general had their way with Illinois and some of their defensive stuff. They blitzed the heck out of KJ, and that disrupt Illinois' ball screen stuff, which is very important for him. And you don't have to worry as much about the pick and pop without Tommy if he's not going to play. So that even gives you more of a reason to be really aggressive of getting up on KJ and knowing that, Merez isn't really a threat until he gets into that circle close to the basket. So you got to make threes around it. You got to have secondary ball handling that's good enough around it. And that's the thing about the Big Ten. There's no off nights, really.
Because Chris Collins can coach, too. He can outcoach Brad Underwood some nights, right? That's the other thing you're going against. So I'm really interested to see what Brad does. If Tommy can't go, how he tries to coach around this, too.
Yep, that's going to be something they got to be able to navigate. So this one, at Nebraska after that, Pinnacle Bank's a tough place to go, even though they haven't been playing great. They just lost at home to USC. Not to say, that Illinois fans know what that's like. And then Ohio State, who if they can go to Mackey and win, I think they can come here and win as well. So still a big window of opportunity with the schedule, but nothing you can assume, especially if you're going to be less than 100% with your roster.
All right, that'll do it for us. Thank you to everybody that was watching on the YouTube channel live. We appreciate you guys. Hit that like button, subscribe to us, and hit the notification bell as well. Everybody, wherever you're listening to your podcast, follow us, rate us, review us, wherever you get your podcast. That helps us out. We'll have plenty more at IlliniInquirer.com. But for now, everybody have a great night. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer podcast.